It began with a single, reasonable request, spoken in the quietest voice I could manage. I had no idea those few words would be the spark that lit a fuse, setting off an explosion that would shatter the life I knew and force me to finally see the truth I'd spent 15 years hiding from. For 15 years, my world had been defined by the four walls of my son's apartment, more specifically, by the small converted storage room at the end of the hallway that served as my bedroom. After my wife, Eleanor, passed, the silence in our own home became a physical weight, a constant, echoing companion. When Derek and Vanessa offered, or more accurately stated, that I should move in with them, I mistook their cold practicality for family duty. I saw it as a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. I didn't realize then that I was simply swapping one kind of silence for another, more painful kind, the silence of being unseen. My name is Arthur Claybourne. I am 68 years old. My days had a worn, familiar rhythm. Like a well-thumbed page in a book no one reads anymore. Each morning I would rise before the sun, a habit from a lifetime of work. I'd shuffle into the kitchen, the heart of the home that never truly felt like mine, and begin cooking. It was my offering, my small payment for existing in their space. The smell of bacon and coffee would slowly fill the air, and I'd wait, listening for the sounds of their waking life, the slam of a door, the blare of a news channel from the living room, Vanessa's sharp laughter on a phone call. That particular November morning was no different. The sky through the window over the sink was a sheet of wet slate, and the last stubborn leaves clung to the oak tree in the courtyard. The water from the faucet was almost scalding as I washed the breakfast pans, but I welcomed the heat. It seeped into the bones of my hands, quieting the persistent ache that had become my body's new language in recent years. Behind me, the world was theirs. The television's chatter, the rustle of a newspaper, the scent of Vanessa's expensive perfume, and then another scent cut through it all. Acrid, familiar, invasive, the sharp click of a lighter. I didn't need to turn around. I knew Vanessa was at the kitchen table, crossing her legs, the morning's first cigarette already between her fingers. The smoke drifted toward me, a gray ribbon that seemed to coil directly into my chest. My lungs, traitorous things that they'd become since Eleanor left, tightened in immediate protest. A deep, rattling wheeze escaped before I could stop it. Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own life? You're there, you occupy space, you make sounds, but to the people around you, you're just background noise, an inconvenient piece of furniture. That's what I was. A piece of furniture that occasionally coughed. I turned slowly, pulling the small, life-saving inhaler from the pocket of my worn cardigan. I held it up, not as a weapon, but as a white flag, a symbol of my weakness, my need. "Vanessa," I said, my voice sandpaper soft, "would you mind terribly, perhaps taking that to the balcony? Just for my sake. These old lungs, they don't agree with the smoke. I'm not complaining, dear, just asking." She didn't even glance my way. She took a long, deliberate drag, tilting her head back to exhale a perfect stream toward the ceiling. Her beauty was always like cut glass, sharp, brilliant, and utterly cold to the touch. "It's my kitchen too, Arthur," she said, her voice dripping with a boredom that was more insulting than anger. "If the atmosphere doesn't suit you, I'm sure your room is smoke-free." The words were a slap, a quiet, dismissive slap. I wanted to say something. I wanted to whisper the truth that buzzed in my head. This is my kitchen. This is my apartment. Every tile, every appliance, bought with the sweat of my brow and Eleanor's love. But the words shriveled up and died in my throat, as they always did. The fear of confrontation, the deeper, more ancient fear of being truly alone, was a gag I could not remove. So I turned back to the sink. I focused on the plate in my hands, the swirling, too-hot water, the view of the gray November day. I tried to make my breath small and shallow, to become even less than furniture, to become nothing at all. That's when Derek walked in. My son, my only child, the boy whose tiny hand once fit completely inside mine. At 42, he carried himself like a man perpetually braced against a strong wind. Shoulders hunched, face etched with lines of frustration that hadn't been there a decade ago. He worked in corporate sales, a job that had sanded away his patience and filled the hollows with a permanent, low-grade irritation. He'd been in a foul mood since dawn, grumbling about quotas and demanding clients. He stopped in the doorway, his eyes landing on me, then on Vanessa's cigarette, then back on me. His face did that thing I'd come to dread, a tightening around the mouth, a hardening of the eyes. It was the precursor to the storm. "What's the problem now?" he asked, his voice flat and heavy. "No problem, son," I murmured, staring at the soap suds. "Just the smoke. You know it makes it hard for me to breathe." "Here we go," he sighed, a sound of profound exasperation. "The daily performance. Vanessa has every right to relax in her own home. Must every single morning come with a commentary from you?" Something brittle inside me, something that had been bending for 15 years, gave a tiny audible crack. "It's not a commentary, Derek," I said, turning to face him. The words came out firmer than I intended. "It's a medical fact. It's a simple request for a little consideration." The change in his face was instantaneous and terrifying. It was as if a mask shattered. All the petty frustrations of his life, the job, the bills, his wife's incessant demands, found a single, convenient target. Me. Consideration? He spat, taking a step forward. His voice dropped to a venomous hiss. "You want consideration? You live in my house. You eat my food. You clutter up our lives with your endless ailments and your sighs. How much consideration do we owe you? Derek, please." I raised a hand, not in threat, but in a feeble, instinctive gesture of self-preservation. "No, you shut up," he roared. The world slowed down. I saw his arm draw back. I saw his hand, the hand I'd held to cross streets, clench into a fist. I saw the furious alien hatred in the eyes of my own child. There was no time to move, no time to plead. The blow landed on the side of my face with a sickening, solid thud. Pain, bright and star-like, exploded in my cheekbone. The force spun me sideways. My hip crashed against the unforgiving edge of the countertop, and my legs simply vanished from under me. I hit the linoleum floor with a jolt that rattled my teeth. As I fell, my glasses flew from my face. I heard the terrible, tiny symphony of their destruction, a plastic crack followed by the high, sad tinkle of glass shards skittering across the tiles. For a moment, there was only the shock, the cold of the floor seeping through my clothes, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. Then another pain arrived, deeper, darker, and infinitely worse. It settled in the center of my chest, a cold, heavy stone where my heart was supposed to be. From above me, through the ringing in my ears, I heard a sound, a laugh, not a chuckle, a full, rich, delighted laugh. "Vanessa." "Well," she said, her voice bright with amusement. It's about time someone reminded him where he stands. Honestly, Derek, my hero. The constant whining was unbearable. I lay there, staring at the pale, dusty underside of the kitchen table. I was 68 years old. I had wiped this boy's tears. I had stayed up all night reading him stories when he was afraid of the dark. I had worked overtime for months to buy him his first proper bicycle. I had given him everything, and in return, he had given me this, the cold floor, shattered glass, and the laughter of his wife. Derek was breathing heavily, a ragged sound above me. I dared to look up. The fury was receding from his face, replaced first by blank shock and then, horribly, by a slow dawning justification. He was convincing himself this was my fault, that I had made him do it. "Get up," he muttered, not looking at me. He turned away, as if the sight of me on the floor was a messy inconvenience. "Stop lying there trying to make me feel guilty." In that moment on the cold floor, I didn't just see broken glass. I saw the shattered reflection of the last 15 years of my life. Slowly, every joint protesting, I pushed myself up. My knees trembled violently, but I locked them. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me falter again. With a calm I did not feel, I knelt and began to pick up the pieces of my glasses. The frames were snapped. The lenses were a spider web of fractures. I gathered the shards in my palm, each one a tiny, sharp monument to my own blindness. Vanessa stubbed her cigarette out in the dregs of my tea mug. A final, petty defilement. "Come on, Derek," she said breezily. "Let him clean up his mess. At least he's good for that." And they left. Just like that. They walked out of the kitchen and back into their lives, leaving me alone amidst the wreckage. But a fundamental shift had occurred. A deep, internal mechanism, rusted shut for years, finally ground into motion. The last chain of illusion snapped. For 15 years I had told myself stories. He's just stressed. She's just young. This is what family does. They stick it out. I'm lucky to have a roof, a tapestry of lies I'd woven to cover the ugly reality. Standing there, my face throbbing, holding the physical evidence of my son's contempt, those lies burned away in an instant. This was not a family. It was a transaction. And I was the only one paying. A strange, cold clarity washed over me. I walked to my room, my cell, and closed the door softly. The familiar sight of Eleanor's photograph on the wall, her smile forever kind, forever patient, almost broke me. But then I remembered. 3 months ago, a young lawyer, a woman with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner, had come to the building about a neighbor's estate. We'd talked in the lobby. I don't know why, but I'd shared slivers of my truth, the loneliness, the feeling of being a burden. She'd listened, really listened, and handed me her card. "Mr. Claybourne," she'd said, "sometimes putting your legal affairs in order is the first step to putting your life in order." The card was in my bedside drawer. I took it out now. The print was blurred without my glasses, but I didn't need to see it. I'd memorized the number, looking at it each night like a prisoner eyeing a key just out of reach. Today, I would use the key. I took out my old, clunky mobile phone, the one Derek derisively called a dinosaur. My hands were steady as I dialed. The ringtone sounded impossibly loud in the silent room. Law offices of Sterling and Voss. A professional, melodic voice answered. "Hello," I said. My own voice surprised me. It was calm, strong. It was the voice of Arthur Claybourne, the man I used to be. "This is Arthur Claybourne. We met a few months ago at the Oakwood Residences. You gave me your card. A brief pause. Then, recognition and warmth. Mr. Claybourne. Of course. I remember. Are you ready? I looked at Eleanor's photograph. In my mind's eye, she nodded. Yes, I said, the word feeling like a vow. I am ready. Can you come now? I gave her the address and hung up. Then I lay back on the bed, closing my eyes. My heart was hammering, not from asthma, but from something else. Something I hadn't felt in a decade and a half. It felt like the first breath after coming up from deep water. It felt like the beginning of something, but the body, the tired, abused vessel, had its own ideas. As the adrenaline faded, a new, terrifying pain lanced through my chest, a white-hot spike of pure agony. I gasped, but no air came. The room swam, dark spots blooming before my eyes. I clutched at my shirt, at my heart, as the world tilted and went black. The last thing I saw was Eleanor's smile. And then, nothing. The sound of my own body hitting the floor was a distant, hollow thump. Then a silence so absolute it felt like a physical presence in the room. It was broken by the muffled sounds from the living room. Voices filtered through the wall of my indifference. Derek's voice, irritated. What was that? Did he knock something over again? Vanessa's reply, a bored laugh, probably tripped over his own shadow. Leave him. He'll sort himself out. But the silence from my room stretched, thick and unnatural. A minute bled into another. I know this because somewhere in the receding fog of my consciousness, I was aware of time passing, a strange, detached observer to my own collapse. Finally, reluctant footsteps approached down the hallway. My door, which was never closed to them, was pushed open. I couldn't see him, but I could feel Derek's presence in the doorway, a looming shadow blocking the light. The irritation was still there, but it was fraying at the edges, giving way to something else. Dad, what are you doing on the floor? This isn't funny. I heard him take a step into the room, then another. The floorboard creaked under his weight. The shadow fell over me. His breathing hitched. I was curled on my side, one arm pinned awkwardly beneath me. The documents I had been looking at, the deeds, the bank statements, the proof of my secret life, were fanned out around me like fallen leaves. The expression on my face, I learned later, was a strange mixture of pain and something close to peace. Derek's first reaction, trained by years of resentment, was dismissive. He thought it was another plea for attention, a pathetic theatrical stunt. But then his eyes, the eyes I had given him, must have registered the utter stillness of my chest, the gray pallor of my skin, the new livid bruise blooming on my cheekbone, his personal signature. A sound escaped him, not a word, a strangled animal noise of shock. Vanessa. He shouted, and the command in his voice was new, raw with panic. Call an ambulance. Now. The next few minutes were a blur of fractured sensations. The cold press of fingers on my neck, the distant, tinny sound of Vanessa's voice, giving our address with clipped efficiency. The overwhelming sense of Derek hovering over me, his fear a tangible, vibrating thing in the small room. Have you ever had a moment where everything you thought you knew was turned upside down? Where the ground literally disappears from under your feet? For Derek, kneeling on that floor, that moment had arrived. The foundation of his world, his superiority, his control, his narrative of the burdensome father, was cracking. I drifted in and out. I heard the urgent chime of the doorbell, the rush of footsteps, the professional, calming tones of strangers. Gentle hands rolled me onto my back. A blood pressure cuff tightened on my arm. Cold discs were placed on my chest. "Mr. Claybourne? Arthur? Can you hear me?" It was a woman's voice, firm but kind. I forced my eyes open. The world was a blur of shapes and light. A face coalesced above me. A woman in her 50s with weary, empathetic eyes and a stethoscope around her neck. Behind her, a younger man was unpacking equipment. "You had a significant cardiac event," the woman, Dr. Vance, her badge said, explained calmly. "You're in good hands. Just try to breathe slowly for me." My gaze wandered past her, finding Derek. He was pressed against the far wall, as if trying to merge with the paint. He looked smaller, younger, frightened. Our eyes met, and I saw the desperate, silent plea in his. "Don't tell them." Dr. Vance followed my gaze. Her eyes, sharp and missing nothing, flicked to the fresh bruise on my face, then to the abrasion on my temple from the fall. Her professionalism didn't waver, but a new layer of intensity entered her demeanor. "Mr. Claybourne," she said, her voice lower, "meant just for me. The bruise on your cheek. That's not from a fall like this. I've been an ER physician for a long time. I know what a fist mark looks like." She paused, letting the weight of the question hang in the air. "Did someone strike you?" The room went preternaturally quiet. I could hear Vanessa's sharp intake of breath from the hallway. I could feel Derek's terror radiating from the wall. The air was thick with unspoken accusation. I looked at my son. I saw the boy who used to crawl into my lap after a nightmare. I saw the man who had just an hour ago looked at me with pure venom. And in that moment the instinct of a father, deep, primal, and stupid, overrode every other feeling. I turned my head back to Dr. Vance. "I fell," I whispered, my voice rough. I got dizzy, tripped over the rug, hit my face on the nightstand. A long, assessing silence. She knew I was lying. Her eyes told me she knew. But she also saw my resolve. "Are you certain?" she pressed, softly. "I'm certain." I had given him his get-out-of-jail-free card. The relief that flooded his features was immediately followed by a different kind of shame. It was one thing to be exposed by a stranger. It was another to be shielded by the man you've just betrayed. Dr. Vance nodded, a curt, professional motion. But as she finished her work, checking my vitals and instructing Derek on aftercare, complete rest, no stress, a follow-up with a cardiologist, she did something unexpected. She pulled a plain business card from her pocket and placed it on my nightstand, next to Eleanor's picture. "This is my direct line, Mr. Claybourne," she said, her meaning clear. "If you need any kind of help, for any reason, you call me." Then they were gone, leaving a medicinal smell and a crushing silence in their wake. Vanessa peered in. "So, he's going to live then? What a drama." "Shut up, Vanessa," Derek snapped, and there was a genuine fury in it now, directed at her for the first time I could recall. "Just shut up." He stood in the hallway, a man torn, looking at my closed door, but unable to make his feet move toward it. The habit of a lifetime, turning away, seeking the easier path, won out. I heard him walk back to the living room, to the numbing glow of the television. Alone again, I let out a breath I felt I'd been holding for 15 years. The crisis had passed, but the mission was clearer than ever. I looked at the two cards on my nightstand, Dr. Vance's and Miss Sterling's. One offered a lifeline for my body, the other for my soul. It was time. I was gathering the scattered documents when the doorbell rang again. This time, the steps coming down the hall were different. Purposeful, measured. "Dad?" Derek's voice at the door was tentative. There's a lawyer here. For you." "Let her in," I said, my voice steady. I had put the documents into a neat folder. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, back straight. "And you come in too, Derek. You'll want to hear this." Miss Claudia Sterling was exactly as I remembered. A woman who carried authority like a well-tailored coat. Her gray suit was impeccable, her gaze analytical and calm. A younger associate, silent and observant, followed her in, holding a leather briefcase. "Mr. Claybourne," she said, shaking my hand. Her grip was firm, dry. "I came as soon as I could. You indicated the matter was urgent." "It is," I replied. "Please, sit." The only chair was offered to her. Derek remained standing by the door, a sentinel of confusion and growing dread. Vanessa appeared behind him, her curiosity a living thing. "What's going on, Dad?" Derek asked, the forced calm in his voice paper thin. "You just had a heart attack. Why do you need a lawyer?" I looked at my son, and for the first time I felt no anger, only a profound, sorrowful clarity. "That's precisely why, Derek, because life is fragile, and I need my affairs to be in order." For my own peace, Miss Sterling opened her briefcase and withdrew a thick file. "Mr. Claybourne has retained us to formalize the management and disposition of his assets," she began, her tone neutral. Derek's anxiety momentarily shifted to a flicker of misguided relief. He managed a tight, understanding smile. "Right. The apartment. Finally transferring the title to me. I appreciate it, Dad. It's been a long time coming." Miss Sterling looked up, and her expression was not unkind, but it was utterly devoid of confirmation. "I'm afraid you misunderstand, Mr. Claybourne," she said, addressing Derek, but his professional title felt like a deliberate wall. "We are here to review the current titles, all of which remain solely in your father's name." The smile on Derek's face froze, then melted away. "What do you mean?" he promised. "We had an agreement. An intention is not a legal transfer," Miss Sterling said smoothly. She placed the first document on the bed beside me. "Deed for the primary residence, 14 Oak Street, Unit 73. Derek stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. "But that's this place. Our home, your father's home," Miss Sterling corrected gently, "which he has graciously allowed you to occupy." The silence wasn't just empty. It was the sound of a man's entire understanding of his world collapsing in on itself. Then she placed 2 more documents beside the first. Deed for the condominium at 17 Grand Avenue, Unit 4B, and deed for the condominium at 22 Riverside Drive, Penthouse B. The air was sucked from the room. Vanessa made a small, choked sound. Derek's face went from pale to ashen. He looked from the papers to me, his eyes wide with utter incomprehension. What condos?" he stammered. "What are you talking about?" "The ones I bought 30 and 22 years ago," I said, my voice quiet in the stunned silence. "The ones I've been renting out through a management company. The rental income has been deposited into an account you knew nothing about." "Why?" The word burst from Derek, a mix of accusation and desperate confusion. "Why wouldn't you tell me? Why live like this, in this room, if you had?" "If I had what, Derek?" I asked, and a lifetime of hurt finally seeped into my tone. "Money? Property? Did you ever ask? In 15 years, did you ever once sit with me and ask, 'Dad, how are you really doing? Do you need anything?' You saw a pensioner, a burden. You never saw me." Miss Sterling added the final piece. She placed a bank statement on top of the deeds. The current balance in your father's primary investment and rental account is just over $200,000. The monthly net income from the properties is approximately $4,000. Vanessa found her voice shrill and disbelieving. This is insane. You were a mechanical engineer. Where did you get that kind of money? I met her gaze. Patents. Vanessa. From a fuel injection system I helped design. The royalties were substantial. I turned back to Derek. You thought you were carrying me. But every envelope of household money I left in your drawer, every payment for the new car, the luxury vacations, that was me. I was funding my own invisibility. The revelation was a physical blow. Derek stumbled back a step, hitting the doorframe. The arrogance, the resentment, the entire flawed architecture of his adult life was crumbling before him. He was not the benevolent provider. He was, at best, a negligent steward of his father's secret wealth. At worst, something far uglier. You let us believe, he whispered, horror dawning. I let you believe what you wanted to believe, I said, the fatigue returning. Because I wanted to believe something too. I wanted to believe you loved me, not what I could give you. Today proved which one it was. Miss Sterling interjected, directing the conversation back to the cold legality of the situation. Mr. Claybourne has decided to sell the Oak Street property. A buyer is prepared with an offer. He will be moving to one of his other properties to convalesce. Sell? Vanessa shrieked. You can't. This is our home. We've lived here for 15 years. You have lived in my home, I said, each word measured and final, for which I am now revoking your privilege. You have 30 days to vacate. The rest was a grim, formal ballet. Miss Sterling presented the sales agreement. The figure, $475,000, drew a gasp from Vanessa. I took the pen from the associate. My hand did not shake. I signed my name on the line that severed the last tangible tie to this chapter of my life. Derek watched, paralyzed, as I signed document after document. The order to change my legal address. The instructions to the property manager. With each stroke of the pen, his future grew smaller, harder, more uncertain. Where will we go? He finally asked, the question hollow, childlike. I looked at my son, now looking every one of his 42 lost years. That, I said softly, is no longer my concern. You are a grown man, Derek. It's time you solved your own problems. Miss Sterling packed her briefcase. On her way out, she paused beside me and said, too low for the others to hear, you are doing the right thing, Arthur. Remember that. Then she was gone. The silence she left behind was volcanic. Vanessa erupted first, turning on Derek, her fury scalding. This is your fault. Your stupid, violent temper. We've lost everything because you couldn't control yourself. And Derek, for the first time, did not cower or deflect. He looked at her, and a bitter awareness was in his eyes. You laughed, he said, his voice dead. You told me it was about time someone put him in his place. You were happy. The fight died in her throat. She stared at him, seeing a stranger, and stormed out, leaving Derek and I alone in the ruins. Dad, he began, tears finally welling. I don't expect you to forgive me. I've been a monster, but please, I loved you. In my own twisted way, I did. I looked at him, my boy, now broken on the shore of his own mistakes. I know, I said, and I meant it, and I loved you. That's why this hurts more than any fist ever could. I told him I wasn't leaving for revenge, but for survival, to choose life over a slow death by 1,000 cuts of disrespect. He didn't ask for another chance. He just stood there, weeping silently as I turned out the light. The morning arrived not with a bang, but with a profound, clarifying quiet, a silence that felt different. Not the oppressive quiet of being ignored, but the peaceful quiet of a storm that has finally passed. Sunlight, pale and winter weak, spilled through the window of my small room, painting a bright rectangle on the bare floor where my suitcase sat, packed and ready. I had been awake since before dawn, lying in the narrow bed, listening. For 15 years, my mornings had been soundtracked by the aggressive percussion of Vanessa's routine, slamming cabinets, the shrill morning news, her voice rising in complaint over some new, imagined slight. Today, there was nothing. The apartment held its breath, as if the very walls knew a fundamental shift had occurred. My body felt fragile, a delicate vessel recently shaken. A dull ache persisted in my chest, a ghost of the cardiac event, and my cheekbone throbbed with a colorful reminder of human cruelty. But beneath the physical weariness was a current of energy I hadn't felt in decades. It was the electric hum of possibility. I rose and dressed slowly, with intention. I wasn't just putting on clothes, I was shedding a skin. The final act was taking Eleanor's photograph from the wall. I wrapped it in my softest sweater, the navy blue one she'd knitted for my 60th birthday. Her smile, captured forever, seemed to hold a new message today. It's time, my love. Go. The suitcase, an old leather companion from travels with Eleanor, felt heavy with memories but light with purpose. I was leaving behind the accumulation of a diminished life, the cheap reading lamp, the generic curtains, the stacks of old magazines. I was taking only what mattered: her picture, a few books, the clothes that felt like me, and the folder containing the documents of my reclaimed self. A soft knock at the door broke the stillness. It was so unexpected, so contrary to the usual barged entrance, that I froze for a second. "Come in," I said, my voice rough with disuse. The door opened slowly, and Derek stood on the threshold. He looked like a man who had fought a war with his own conscience and lost. Dark smudges painted the skin beneath his red-rimmed eyes. He hadn't shaved. He wore the same clothes from yesterday, now rumpled and weary. "Can I?" he asked, gesturing weakly into the room. I nodded to the chair. He took a seat on its very edge, as if afraid to claim the space. His eyes swept the barren room, the empty closet, the blank wall, the packed suitcase. The reality of my departure seemed to hit him anew. "You're really going," he said. It wasn't a question. "The cab will be here soon," I confirmed. He nodded, swallowing hard. The silence stretched. But it wasn't the hostile silence of before. It was a silence filled with the deafening roar of everything that needed to be said. "I didn't sleep," he began, his voice cracking. "I just sat in the dark and replayed it all. Every time I snapped at you, every birthday I forgot, every complaint I made to Vanessa about you being in the way." He looked at his hands, clenched in his lap. "You were right. I saw a burden. I never saw my father." What is the moment when a person truly grows up? Is it when they leave home? When they start a career? Or is it the moment they are forced to look, without flinching, at the damage they have caused, and finally take responsibility for it? For Derek, that long-delayed adulthood was dawning in the harsh light of this quiet morning. He raised his tear-filled eyes to mine. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Dad. I don't deserve it. I need you to know that the man who hit you yesterday, that's not who I wanted to be. That's not who I am at my core. I got lost. Somewhere between the pressure and the bitterness, I just got lost." His words were raw, unpolished, They held the ring of truth that all his previous facile apologies had lacked. "Derek," I said, my own throat tight, "I'm not leaving to punish you. I'm leaving so I can breathe, literally and figuratively. If I stay, nothing changes. The resentment builds. Another blow lands. And one day, my heart won't restart." I held his gaze. "I choose to live. And to do that, I have to go." He absorbed this, the finality of it, the understanding that my action wasn't an act of aggression, but one of profound self-preservation. What do I do now? The question was a whisper, the plea of a boy for his father's guidance one last time. I walked to the window, looking down at the sun-dappled courtyard. "I can't tell you that, son. You're 42. The path is yours to walk now." I turned back to him. "But if you want an old man's advice, look at your life. Look at the person you become when you're trying to please everyone but yourself. Ask yourself if you're happy, or just accustomed." Before he could answer, footsteps clicked sharply down the hall. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, dressed as if for a hostile takeover, her face a mask of icy contempt. "Derek, what is this?" she spat, ignoring me completely. "He's throwing us out, and you're sitting here having a heart-to-heart? Have some dignity." Derek didn't jump. He didn't flinch. He slowly turned his head and looked at his wife, and the look in his eyes was entirely new, a calm, weary clarity. "I'm talking to my father," he said, his voice low but firm. "This is what that looks like. Wait for me in the other room. We need to talk." Vanessa stared, her mouth slightly agape. The power dynamic she had curated for 15 years had just publicly short-circuited. She made a sound of disgust, spun on her heel, and marched away, the slam of their bedroom door echoing like a gunshot. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Derek's lips. He looked at me. "First step," he said. "The hardest one," I replied, feeling a fragile blossom of hope. My phone chimed then, a text. It was Alana. "I'm downstairs with the car whenever you're ready." No rush. The warmth of her simple offer spread through my chest, a direct counter to the cold ache of the last hours. "That's my ride," I said. Derek stood immediately. He stepped forward and, without a word, took the handle of my heavy suitcase. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. It was an act of service, of care, perhaps the first genuine one he'd offered me in a decade and a half. We walked out of the room together. I didn't look back. The kitchen, the living room, the hallway, they were just spaces now, sets for a play that had ended. At the front door, I paused. This was the threshold. Derek set the suitcase down. He looked terrified, lost but somehow more present than I'd seen him in years. "Dad, I didn't let him finish. I closed the distance between us and pulled him into an embrace, a full, tight, fatherly hug. He stiffened for a second, shocked. Then his arms came around me and he buried his face in my shoulder. His body shook with silent, wrenching sobs. "A son isn't just blood, Derek," I whispered into his ear, the words meant for him alone. "A son is a choice. It's a verb. It's how you love. You can still choose to be that son. It's not too late." I let him go. From my pocket, I took a plain, sealed envelope and placed it on the small table by the door. "The attorney's contact details are in there," I said. "And something else." He looked at the envelope, but didn't touch it, as if it were radioactive. I opened the door. The hallway air was cooler, fresher. I picked up my suitcase. "Goodbye, son," I said. Or, I hope, see you later. Then I crossed the threshold and started down the stairs. With each step downward, I felt lighter. The weight of their disappointment, the burden of their contempt, the anchor of my own misplaced loyalty, it all peeled away, layer by layer, left behind on the steps of the past. Outside, the world was bright and alive. And there she was. Alana Vance stood leaning against a sensible sedan, her silver hair catching the morning sun. She wasn't in her doctor's coat, just a simple sweater and trousers. She smiled when she saw me, a smile that reached her eyes and held no pity, only a shared understanding of life's second acts. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just took the suitcase from my hand and put it in the trunk. "Ready?" she asked, opening the passenger door for me. I took one last look up at the third-floor window. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the glass. Derek. Watching. I turned back to Alana. "Ready," I said, and I got in the car. As she pulled away from the curb, I didn't feel like a fugitive. I felt like a pioneer. The city streets, familiar yet new, streamed past the window. "You know," I said, more to myself than to her. "People think at 68, your story is written. The final chapters are just about managing the decline." Alana glanced at me, her hands steady on the wheel. "And what do you think?" "I think," I said, a genuine smile finally finding its way to my lips, "they're wrong. I think a new story can start on any page. You just have to be brave enough to turn to it." She reached over and placed her hand on mine. It was a simple, grounding touch. "So," she said, "home?" I looked ahead at the road, winding toward a future I had chosen for myself. "Yes," I said, the word rich with meaning. Home, in the apartment on the third floor. Derek finally picked up the envelope. His hands trembled as he broke the seal. Inside was Miss Sterling's business card as promised, and something else, wrapped in a soft flannel cloth. He unfolded the cloth. Inside lay the shattered remains of my eyeglasses, the frames snapped, the lenses a crystalline web of destruction. A note was tucked beside them. In my careful script, it read, "This is all I had left after 15 years, broken glass and a broken heart. The glass cannot be fixed. The heart still can. Try, son. It's not too late. Dad." Derek stood by the window for a long time, the cold glass against his forehead, the broken pieces held gently in his palm. The tears came again, but they were clean now. They were tears of grief for what was lost, and the first, searing drops of clarity for what might still be saved. Behind him, the door to his bedroom opened. Vanessa stood there, suitcase in hand, her expression unreadable. She said nothing, just waited. Derek turned from the window. He looked at her, then at the broken glasses in his hand, then at the note. He didn't see the man he had been just yesterday. He saw a fork in the road. He took a deep, shuddering breath. The first step had been taken in my room this morning. The second step began now, in the silent, sunlit living room of a home that was no longer his. So, what do you think happens next? Does Derek choose the difficult path of true change? Does he find his way back to being the man, the son he was meant to be? Or does the weight of old habits prove too heavy? I want to know what you believe. Put your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of Arthur's courage resonated with you, if it reminded you that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity and your life, then do me a favor. Hit the like button. It helps this channel more than you know. And if you want more powerful human stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to Jackson Stories. We have so many more journeys to share with you. Thank you for watching and for being a part of this community. Remember, your next chapter is always waiting to be written. See you in the next video.